homma nyt kuntoon ja sillä selvä. Ei tää on mulle mikään terapiareissu.
We are talking The Knocking, or at least that is the English title of this movie from Finland. I won't go through the cast or behind the camera names, I'll just butcher them, so go look them up. So The Knocking, this falls under the folk horror category, I would say. And it's a kind of slow burn, kind of mystic woods style film. It focuses on three adult siblings who are somewhat estranged and have their kind of personal demons and a little bit of a weird upbringing to a certain degree. And they've been left this house out in the middle of the forest by their parents who have now both passed away. And it's a very kind of out of the way property. So they decide to go to the house, decide what to do with it. The brother kind of wants to sell up ultimately and, I'll get the money, whilst sort of one of their sisters wants to sort of keep the house because she thinks the kind of the forestry area is ancient and kind of, needs to be kind of preserved because they not only just own the house, they own a large amount of, square footage around the house as well. And then the other sister's kind of a little unsure what she wants to do, but she's kind of leaning towards kind of selling it as well. So we learn through kind of flashbacks in this movie the kind of the status quo between the kind of three siblings, what has brought them there. And they've all got their kind of their inner demons, you might say. However, when they end up spending the night at this house, strange things kind of start to happen. The trees seem to be a little bit strange. There seems to be a knocking that comes from the trees if you listen closely. And if you fell a tree, you will see strange kind of rings around the tree. And obviously that's that will determine its age. But some of these rings don't really kind of make sense in regards to what they are, what they should be doing and things like this. Now, as the film progresses, we kind of learn more about what's kind of causing it. Possibly this, is there a kind of a, for example, a spirit within these woods that is kind of a nature spirit, so to speak? What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss The Knocking. Okay, so if you like slow burn movies, then this is going to be one for you. It's certainly not going to be for everyone, but if you like a dramatic kind of style folk horror that's more about kind of atmosphere and mythology, then you may find this movie to your taste. What I would say on the plus side, I mean, with foreign language movies, as I've mentioned, this is a Finnish film, it's sometimes difficult to really get a grip on the acting, I would say. But, judging, although I can't, understand what they're saying, I'm reading the subtitles and looking at the kind of the emotive body language and stuff. I've got to say, I think the acting here, certainly to me, looked like it was done pretty well. So it's pretty solid acting. The film does have this kind of eerie creepiness. It's never outright scary or anything like that, this film. But it does have this kind of sense of isolation where this house in the woods is kind of so kind of away from anything else. And when we get to the kind of the hour mark within the movie, then it starts to have more kind of supernatural once they kind of end up kind of spending the night there. And at that point, I would say from the kind of hour sort of point to the end of the movie, there's some really fantastic kind of cinematography, use of kind of like filters to give you this kind of like this otherworldly kind of feel. Great use of lighting with this kind of forest kind of seeming sort of very mystical and things like this. And kind of like, something's coming out of the forest, so to speak. So I kind of really enjoyed the kind of the cinematography. There's a kind of, we do see something more overt, shall we say. And I think that it looks kind of creepy. It looks like, kind of not from this world and kind of quite kind of like freaky in some ways. And I have to say our kind of final wrap up in regards to the kind of the fate of the characters, I thought was pretty interesting. It was kind of telegraphed through the movie. So it shouldn't come as a complete surprise, but I thought it was quite a neat way to kind of end the film. So what doesn't work in this movie? like I said, this is a very slow burn film. And when it comes down to it, I mean, I have to say, I think it was a little meandering, let me just say. There's a lot, it's essentially a dialogue-filled movie. It's these three siblings, and we get a smatter of other kind of characters here and there, and we get kind of maybe 10% of the film in flashback as well, when they're young. But it's really three people, or a group of people, when we had the flashbacks, just conversing in this, cabin in the woods. It's kind of what most of this movie is about. And I have to say that it kind of introduces certain storylines that I really didn't feel had much impact on the story overall. And I'm not going to go into specifics, but we learned certain things about each of the three of our kind of siblings, and I didn't really feel it amounted to very much, to be honest. There's lots of kind of discussion about the personal circumstances and things like this, but when it came down to it, it was irrelevant, or for the most part irrelevant. Even the kind of the flashback sequences when we learn the kind of the status quo with the kind of the parents, and I have to be honest with you, when those in particular, I'm questioning the relationship, certainly between the mother and father, and how it kind of got to a certain point. It just seemed like why would they be there? They seem very different, and it just seems surely this would have been kind of like over a period of time. I don't know. I can't spoil anything for you. But it didn't really quite gel to me, that kind of relationship, I have to say. So when it comes down to it, it goes into more of a kind of a more horror element towards the end, after the kind of hour mark. But I didn't feel the lead up to that really, amounted to anything substantial. It was lots of kind of like peripheral kind of dialogue and scenes where I feel were just sort of treading water up until that point. So ultimately it's a little dull. I mean, I had to just stop and start this movie a couple of times because I was kind of just losing interest. So I just took a break a couple of times because it was just kind of like, just a little bit dull. The horror stuff as well, I don't know if it completely was satisfying. I think it kind of looks quite cool in some degree, in some ways. And I quite like the ending. But even so, I still don't know if it was fully satisfying. So, this is definitely going to be an amount of taste. Do you like the slow burn, dramatic kind of folk horror sound? Then if yes, you may want to check it out. But for fans of more general kind of horror, I would say it's probably, you'll find it a little quiet, a little slow for most, I would say. So overall, it's not trying to be anything it's not, but I do feel it could have had more meat on the bone, certainly in the first hour, because I feel it was a little lacking there. And the dramatic revelations didn't have a huge amount of impact. So it's a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.